We come second. And FX ruled the day. One man dared speak to the titans of visual effects. In association with FXMogul.com and starring Lee Stranahan, it's FXMogul Radio.
And we're talking to Steve Bannerman from GenArts.
What we really want to do with Tinder is to go and talk to customers a lot to find out where they really find the value and how they would really like our entire portfolio to look to them and how they'd like to buy these products. And so just about everything we do at GenArts is really driven by the way our customers want to buy our products. So effective immediately, people will basically come to the GenArts.com website to buy all of the Tinder and Tinderbox products in the same form, the same that they used to buy them from the Foundry at similar pricing. And, we've made a couple of different minor tweaks to things like licensing and stuff like that. For instance, I think that we're going to be selling the Tinderbox product as a suite as opposed to individual boxes. I think that customers definitely have shown that they prefer to buy it that way. We used to offer Sapphire as a suite of boxes, and customers clearly told us that they preferred to buy it as a suite as opposed to a collection of boxes, and so we changed that some time back. But, for the most part, the product is pretty much the same product they've known and loved. They'll buy it pretty much the same way. And then what we do in the future is really going to be wholly dependent on what our customers think.
Interesting. Now, I know you're really addressing this from the GenArts side, and not the Foundry side. But what do you see this having an effect on Nuke development specifically? Because it seems like that has really picked up. There's obviously a lot of buzz in the industry about Nuke, especially in the past, I would say 6 months. The drum has started beating pretty hard on Nuke.
Yep. Well, again, it's pretty hard for me to speak for the Foundry, but I can sort of speak for GenArts and the conversations that we've had and the opportunities that we both perceive. And so you're right. I think that the emergence of Nuke has been a pretty strong force in the industry, and I think that it's created some interesting opportunities for our two companies in particular. And I say our two companies primarily because, number one, we already have a history of collaborating with each other. As I mentioned, we're both founding members of the OpenFX Association, and we're both sort of significant contributors and developers of the OFX API. And so we both have sort of a philosophy around wanting to be able to evolve technology and then distribute the technology to the industry at large. I also think that both companies have demonstrated a lot of technology and engineering prowess over a significant amount of time. I know from our side we've always had tremendous respect for the engineers and development teams at the Foundry over the years, and consider them to be very, very worthy competitors of ours, and caused us to do great things to try and make sure that we were effectively competing against them. But now the way that the industry sort of evolved, we sort of took a look around and we noticed that we were far more complementary than we were competitive. And that's when we really started to realize that this kind of an alliance made a lot more sense. Because, even though the Foundry is not getting out of the plugins business, they still have a really strong product with things like Furnace and Rolling Shutter and Ocula. But the types of plugins that they're focused on are really much more complementary to the types of plugins that we work on, as opposed to being directly competitive. And so as you think about the evolution of some of the work that they've done around stereo, and how we can make that available, to the broader problem of applying, general purpose visual effects like glows and blurs and stuff like that, to stereo shots. There's an awful lot of work that we can do together. And then, again, we're keenly interested in seeing how that sort of, how that has implications for the evolution of the OFX API.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about stereo. Is there anything more you can say about that in terms of GenArts development, because that's a big issue for...
Well, not necessarily specifically about products, but I can talk a little bit about what our customers have described as the problems that they want to try and solve.
Sure, yeah.
So, you talk to some of the folks like, I was down in Santa Monica a couple weeks ago talking to the folks at Hydraulics, about the work that they had recently done on Avatar. And they talked about how they had to use Sapphire to create some of those shots. And, they needed to create an effect in one eye, and then they needed to recreate that exact same effect in the second eye. And then they had to use our grid plugin to actually track the shot, track both eyes through the rest of the shot. And it was a pretty arduous, sort of time-consuming process for them. And what they'd really love to be able to do is they'd love to be able to sort of create the effect in one eye and then have that effect automatically applied and tracked to the second eye through the whole shot. And so, being able to evolve that kind of technology is a kind of difficult problem to solve technically. And again, you look at some of the work that the Foundry have done in the stereo space with products like Ocula. They've sort of advanced the state of the art in many ways. And so given that some of the technology that we need to be able to solve that problem kind of lives in the Sapphire plugin, and some of it is stuff that we need to get from the host platform, there's a significant opportunity for us to more tightly couple that solution so that we, if we both know what each other really needs, we can both sort of build that more in lockstep. Final question is just I guess sort of backstage soap opera question, because I find it interesting. How does something like this come up where you're dealing with an effectively a competitor like the Foundry, who on the plugin side? How does it come up? Does someone call someone, or is there? Well, I can't go into too much detail about that, but I can say that this industry is pretty small. Everybody pretty much knows everybody. And our two companies have been around for a long time, so it's not like, somebody just sort of landed from Mars or anything and no one really knows who they are. And so the dynamics of a lot of the companies are very well known to the others. And, I think that from a timing perspective, people just look at the way the industry evolves, and a lot of things start to become, more apparent. And so you look at how, from our perspective, you look at how, the Foundry has evolved, how their split from Digital Domain happened, and then, we have a lot of customers in common. And so when they did the deal with Sony around Katana, obviously that was something that we took a lot of notice of. But a lot of it really boils down to, what do our customers want? And what's the best way for us to go and be everywhere where our customers want to be? And so you look at our philosophy, it's always been about trying to deliver the best possible technology on all of the different host platforms where our customers want to live. And we want to, when Catherine Hayes joined the company a couple of years ago, she laid out a pretty aggressive growth strategy that included components around internal innovation as well as acquisitions and key partnerships. And if you look at what's happened since then, the acquisition of Speed 6, the strategic alliance with Lucasfilm, the acquisition of WonderTouch, the recent announcement of Sapphire 5 for the Autodesk platform, we really are executing pretty tightly on that vision. And this step is a really, really natural extension of that very same plan and that very same vision that we've been executing for the last couple of years. Yep, that's great. Steve Bannerman, thanks very much, and good luck with the Strategic Alliance. Thanks for being part of FXMogul. Lee, thank you again. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
For more news, info, and tutorials, visit FXMogul.com.